Martin is coming. So we will continue with the next presentation by Martin Piacek. He is here. I'm introducing you now, Martin. Martin is joining us today from Slovak Republic. He's artist himself. He's working mainly with sculpture. He's also a professor at the Art Academy in Bratislava in the intermediate department. And we know each other for some years, and actually it was by coincidence that we got aware that Martin is doing fruit trees as a hobby. This is also why I asked Bernhard Kaiser, is it now a hobby that he's still doing this racing winning, or is that he is not doing it as a main income? So Martin declares this, he owns an orchard, an Obstanger, and is doing there some artistic research as well, and is doing also a fruit drying plant, eine Dörrobstanlage, as a hobby. But you will tell us all about this in your presentation, and I'm very happy that you're here, and thank you for accepting the invitation, and the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much for having me. I don't know if you already see the first picture. I don't. It will come? Yes. Okay, because I have some pictures for you. It's been very interesting so far, and I a little bit adjusted the things that I want to say according to what's debated on. I really like this economic aspect of the thing, really, because I think it's crucial that this ratio of energy measured by time and money, and what do we expect actually from our projects, and how long we can sustain them. So I would maybe slowly start with the pictures, but I can tell you that I'm an artist, visual artist, and a teacher mainly. And I started this project from dear enthusiasm, but I see some perspective in it. I will continue. So the area that I'm talking about, I'm actually maintaining quite a large garden already for a long time, but that was not enough. I needed more place more area to place the trees. Okay. So luckily I was able to purchase the piece of land that is not big. It's actually just 2,000 square meters. That is very small for an orchard. That also affects the economic side of it. When you want to be sustainable in fruit making, you need to have thousands of fruit trees of the same variety. And it's still very vulnerable. I have friends who keep something like hundreds of trees, and maybe it's interesting in some way, maybe in an aspect of producing the spirits, schnapps, but still it's a hobby. So my garden is aiming towards maybe 100 tree plus, which is still making it a pretty small place for a production. But I have some different aspects in the game. Danke, that's it, fantastic. Yeah, so let's open it. Is it opening? I don't see the... Makes it a pretty small place to... I'm not an Apple guy, so should I double click the... I did, and it's now... It's thinking. Okay. Yes, yes. And what is the full screen here, please? It's F5 also? What will be the full screen? Yes, danke. I will try to keep my project or my talking quite compact. Danke sehr, fantastic. So this is a brief look how the area, how the plot looks now. It's pretty nothing. Many people tell me that it's nothing there, but actually when you plant a tree, when you plant an orchard, you need to count the future. You count with the future growth of the trees. So it's already pretty packed, I would say. In this extensive way of farming, you need also wider gaps amongst the individual trees. I wanted to put you some brief information that's mostly for people who are like into the planting. This is rather an economic point of view. So if you know that my garden is about 2,000 euro, then you know how much I spent buying it. It's quite a lot for me. It's been a huge family investment. And that really influenced the economic side of the thing. I cannot count with the revenue in my life. Like the capital purchase will never come back. So it leaves me just few options of dealing with it, even that I love it and I do it from love. So here are some possible sources of revenue, like to sell it fresh, to let people to pick themselves, or to add some value into it, like processing it yourself or with the help of some different groups. I already have some different groups that would be able to participate in the process, but sincerely, I'm really tired of like money exchange, and I won't wait until somebody gives me 3 euros. So I will rather implement my kids or their friends into this, so it's a kind of training for them. It's a kind of training and maybe some little source of income for them to maintain this money operations, these little money operations like selling from the yard, right? So I'm more interested into these monetary approaches, and because I understand it in wider, as Christiane said, I understand a little bit like partly as an artistic project, or rather I don't like to distribute between the activities, so it's all connected. That's why it's also connected to my praxis. And to praxis as a teacher and as an artist as well. So there are several ways how we can benefit from such a plot. If I would maybe quote Chantal Mouffe, like the opposite of the private, like let's open it, let's make it accessible, it makes the good accessible in some not naive and sustainable way. Of course, the orchard has to be fenced. It's basically it's against the deers and the animals, but I don't lock so far. I don't lock, but how to make this structure that's really like a private structure? How to make it more open in some sustainable way? So I'm thinking of possible processes. I've contacted such a feministic cooking collective and who are working with seasonal food, and we have some jam producing collectives as well. The donation, I think, is the big part of it. I think everybody who has a garden and have a crop that doesn't need, I think it's usually has to deliver it directly to the people. So meanwhile, I will talk about these approaches. I will click over some working diary, and then I will get to the more specific project of mine. It's a very young project. It's only 2 years since I own the land, and it's only 1 year since I work on the land. So this is what you see, the original state. It's been a Lucerne field, and I prefer, and also I didn't mention that I'm kind of want to react in this orchard in the upcoming climate changes. So the fig is becoming really domestic in my area, in the southern Slovakia, or like where the Hungary, Austria, and Slovakia meet, the area actually where we are now. The fig is becoming really a new domestic plant. So I dedicated half of the area for the fig, and the other half I rather dedicated towards the walnuts, which are also a long-term investment. And as you know, it's pretty endangered now with the anthracnosis and with the little invasive wasp that causes the black walnuts, and they don't ripe. So I don't know if it was a good decision. We will see. I'm also happy that I'm able to work with my father there. We have some common ground. It's really bonding. But for other activities, of course, I hired the help. So this was the fencing process, and we had the meadow sown. So the lucerne was turned upside down, and the mixed meadow was sown. What you see is upcoming mixed meadow, but the lucerne is still very strong. Not a problem. It's really pretty interesting mixture of flowering society growing there. I will show later how it represents itself. So we rely mostly on handwork, but not from romantic, but I wanted to do as much as I can myself, but of course I cannot do it all alone. So, dogs are part of it. That I didn't have more. I have garden, but it was not enough. So I live there. I live in that village, and I always like bicycle around and walk the dog. I always have seen these mostly elderly people like still keeping their external gardens. It's called like external gardens. Sometimes people used to spend summer there. They had little huts and they spend it in external gardens. And it's really hard to get already because it's a speculative land. Of course, it's a very small. Stripes are still declared or legally declared as a garden land because you can buy either a building plot or agricultural land. Agricultural land only the native. I'm not a Hungarian citizen, so I cannot even buy the Hungarian agricultural land. It has to be minimum some area, and there are some required activities that you have to do there. You cannot do whatever you want with agricultural land. So this specific area of gardening plots is really becoming very scarce. So I was really lucky to get this opportunity, and I was lucky from more because it's, as I realized later, it's the riverbed, so it's pretty good earth. It's visible on Google Earth as well. As I'm switching through this working diary, I'm building there such a structure that I hope it will be like an open, rather like an open structure, keeping these beautiful horizontal views to the country. I need this structure because it's crazy hot there. In the summer, you need some shadow, and also I like to invite people, as I said. So this is the summer of the last year, and I already contracted my friend twice a year. We are cutting, but we are leaving always some part uncut. And the biologists that I'm inviting as well are happy for it. I continue with building this shed alone, but sometimes I have visits. And what I'm coming to is the organizing of the field. So the sticks you see are representing the future trees, and I was playing a lot with this geometry or with this ornament of the orchard. What could it mean? How it would look? How it would look 5 years after? How 10, 15? So coming back to the economic aspect of the thing, the walnut orchard is interesting after maybe 10, 15 years. So in this kind of era that we live now, that is pretty fast, and you cannot really rely, or you cannot handle over your project to your ancestors, to your kids. You cannot really, like automatically how it was before, that people inherited the land and they continue to work on the land. This is not an automatic thing anymore, and we cannot require it from our people. So I'm thinking how to fulfill the potential of the area in my lifetime, in my active years. I will add some more plants here. So the trees that are coming are generally 1 year old, and I'm trying to buy grown-up trees. They're a little bit more expensive. As much as I can afford, I'm buying the bigger trees. So we're planting them, finishing the roof, adding more plants. It's all the time more and more plants. Anytime I have some money, I'm buying plants. So bringing the trees was an important thing for me last autumn, and as I said, it's represented also in my art praxis. So this was an exhibition I did for Prague, and originally it was meant to be made from walnut trees that will sleep in the gallery in the winter with the open windows to keep the gallery cold, of course, to not wake them up, and to that I will then, with this enhanced sleep or with kind of like with kind of different experience that they have there, I will bring them to my orchard. So that was like original plan of the project. But as you see, something I brought to the orchard, I brought the painted poles that represent something like maybe if you roll a flag over the pole, something like a border sticks. It was there were some different media included, but I will not bother you with the sense of the exhibition. I'm only taking these peeps in just to see how much it is connected in my mind and how much continues the different topics. A different exhibition, this marble feast of actually belongs to my wife. It's a double enlarged, and but the title and the whole topic of the exhibition was very much included into what I all the time solve. So that was the direct question that I gave her on telephone, and I said to myself that what she will answer will be the title of the exhibition, and she said this. So lucky. It is like a small. I asked her, "What do you think of the orchard?" And if she would say it's a pretty expensive and stupid project, then it would be the title of the exhibition. So I'm happy. I was lucky. I was kind of lucky. Yes. This is the last winter. It's pretty empty, but for me it's never empty. You know, like this era is like when you love something and you are dealing with it, it's never empty. It's you see the future in the thing. You are all the time generating. It's a kind of transcendental thing for me. I would say it's a kind of like a temple. But I don't want to get into these things. But placing the holes, bringing again the new trees, and this is already the poles that you see. All the time in the season you fight with the grass, of course. It's a hard work to cut it and to rake it and to make it dry or to distribute it or to put it to compost. You have to cut it at least twice a year if you want to keep it green. But the society, the botanical society there is pretty rich. I'm happy. My students are also like invited into the project, and time to time they visit, and mostly we just have a good time. But I think it's kind of like they also benefit partly from it, and they will benefit more as it will really give fruits. So this is the countryside around. We are talking about the presence of the Danube River that used to flood the area for centuries. Now already for, let's say, 100 years, it stopped flooding the area, but there are still, the underwater level is pretty high, fortunately, in these weathers without rain. And here the figs are coming, and I don't want to get into the topic of the figs because it's pretty wide, but there are, from these three major groups of figs that we know, maybe the Balkan fig is the most suitable for our conditions and can handle the winter. This is again an example how it's mixed into my praxis. So this is the loess. I think we mentioned the word already today. That's the kind of soil that we have there. It's this very compact sandy soil that it's hard to dig, and also it's losing the water pretty easy. What I do there is a kind of like non-permanent architectures. What I try to do there, from one point it's forbidden to build anything. If it's another building plot, and I respect it. I don't want to encourage the others to build on the gardens, etc. So I respect it, and it's only those temporary structures. So these are meant, these are like bringing the feeling of the south, and they're protecting the figs, giving them such a wind barrier and also such a sun reflector. I hope it will work. Just need more stone. And there are different kind of approaches that I try to, I would like to accumulate the knowledge of the area. I'm really interested about the knowledge of the area. So we started with this mapping all kind of mapping. This is GPS mapping. My friend is an enthusiast, and you need to purchase an extra coordinates to really produce an exact GPS map. So this is what we are working on, and it will be like an open digital archive of it will also collect the informations about the varieties, etc. A different kind of mapping is that my friends from the National Museum that I really like how they are enthusiastic about their field of interest. So the result of their several visits was this list of species, but also to know the area, you need to visit it for years. So 1 year is not enough to map the area also from entomological point of view. It's kind of missing text because it was full. Never mind. So the area now it's becoming more and more full. I'm also like storing my pieces there, not as a form as a gallery. I don't understand it as exhibiting. Rather that I want to collect and incorporate the time and the weather into my pieces. So some pieces will be exposed there, and they are meant to be like drinking places for birds, etc. So it's like how to put it all together. In our studio, we are running this series of lecture called Soft Norm. You can find it on Facebook. It's for years already, and so because we are dealing with the topic of food this year that we collectively accepted. Try to use this horizontal decision making in those things. So we invited this pomologist, a friend of mine, who was showing us the old varieties with all pluses and minuses. Like you cannot be just nostalgic about the old varieties, but they should be kept. So I have part of my trees are coming from old varieties also. It's another example from art praxis that I deal with the topic of growths, or with the element. Here is specifically about the calcium or the different aspects. So that was shortly about the orchard, but here I want to get to the concrete project. This is not the concrete project. This is still an introduction. This is a workshop that took place in Czech Republic, in White Carpathian. I recommend you to visit. It's beautiful. Cultural and natural landscape combined for centuries, and the fruit making there was really a traditional source of income, and drying of fruit was a basic activity. These fruit drying sheds were built at the end of the gardens, closer to the orchard. Also the risk of the fire, but also like why to transport everything, and they were really able to process hundreds of kilos per season in each such a fruit dryer. This is a really old one. We were reconstructing it in a traditional way. This is how it looks like when those shelves are pulled out. So you see there's 3 parts. In the back there is an oven, then there is this drying chamber, and then there is some manipulation space that you need also in the case of rain. Also to pull out, this is when the wood drying facility is full and ready to use. This is how those traditional nets for fruit drying looks like. They really didn't bother much with the fruits there. Like we understand the dry fruit different than it was before. For us, it's a little treat. It's something special. It's something, fancy. That time in those poor areas, it sometimes represented up to 40% of their diet, which is crazy. Imagine your kids asking for food and you give them dry fruit, because you have no protein for them. So it was rather a need. It was a need to dry fruits. I'm showing this chamber because it was really hot, this body of the chamber, and those fruit juices were dripping on it, and then they were burning on it, so that it caused the specific taste of this traditionally dried fruit. They are little smoked. Somebody likes it, somebody hates it, but they are quite specific. They are different to something that we get now in the store. It's because it's a historical house. Then we are treating it in a traditional techniques. This is inspecting the chamber, and this is the new orchards that they are planting. also in an extensive way. It's important to say these are extensive orchards. Like the trees are wider, they're usually higher, and they are not irrigated, and they are there are certain different aspects of how to treat an extensive orchard. It gives less fruit. You have to wait longer, but the life expectancy of the orchard is much bigger. It comes to the hundreds years. The intensive orchard, it's usually replaced after 20, 30 years. I'm not against the intensive orchards. We need them too, but this is like an interesting alternative. And I left this. This is a newly built wooden, in a traditional style, but newly built fruit dryer in a little village where the community of enthusiasts build it together, and it works for the whole village. So it has a list. You sign up, so the oven never gets cold in the season. But it also works as a community center and like a clubhouse in the winter. You know, they organize these things there. So it was really I think it was a good contribution to the traditional village. And here I come to the actual project. It's just one of few, but one of many. But I will elaborate it a little more. This is the platform that the my mobile fruit dryer is built on. These are the parameters. It's a trailer. It's a trailer behind the car. We did it with this with our civil group Public Postament, that it's dealing with the art in the public space as an alternative to the complicated legislative processes that you need to undertake in order to exhibit something in public space. So we have this mobile platform that we offer it to artists. We had like 20 artistic interventions on it in Prague and Bratislava mostly. And you don't need to really apply, you just park the car, so where it is allowed to park. So, or you drive the car, somebody was driving it around the roundabout, you know, like you can do many things. There is also a platform to stand on or to speak or to perform. I will not get into details of these artistic approaches, but at the end of the project I decided to use it in this way. So there are some sketches how it should look, and this is how we did it in 2016, I guess. And it works pretty well. I must say it was just imagined, but it works pretty well from various aspects. It's light, it's transportable. These textile walls are allowing the moist to leave the chamber. You want to get rid of water, so you need the moist to leave. And also they kind of help to not overheat the chamber. You don't want to cook the fruits. You need like 50, 60 degrees, max 70, and this is exactly what you can achieve there in the space. It stays hot pretty long, also in the night, and usually it takes like 24 hours to make one batch of apples, let's say, if they are cut. This is the country around the Banská Bystrica where I first intervened with this project. To the cultural center called peripheral centers. They deal with this agriculture and the fruits of the art, and they take it sometimes very like literate, like fruits of the arts. So we worked with these old apple trees that are like doesn't belong to no one actually, or like maybe they belong but nobody really cares. So and nobody harvests them. So and we harvested pretty much just from these poor trees. Like really, you would be surprised how much it gives. And there is a Czech interesting artist, Tomáš Uhnák, and he's one of those guys who are making those maps of abundant fruit trees. I think I have seen something also in England that it exists. There are cider trees. There are such a cider enthusiasts that are having GPS maps of the proper varieties that are just that nobody really takes care of. You don't need much wood actually, it's just illustrative pictures, but you don't need much wood to run that oven that is inside. It's pretty small. this is when it works. This is how you can peep in. There is also a thermometer, of course. Since that time, I travel sometimes with these friends who are dealing with old varieties. We sometimes visit such a traditional farmers markets, or we just visit someone who has apples and we dry it. But I don't have much time, but I'm happy to do that. It's a nice relax also. This is approximately, I think it's two dryings, and we did some more, and we left it to that civil group, and they are using it as a product. They are packing it and giving it as a souvenir, etc. It comes together with this recognition of the old varieties, and also the mapping what variety is good for drying, because usually the sweet apples from the shop are not so good for drying. They are too sweet, they're too bland in taste. You need some savory taste in it. So actually those more sour varieties are better, like these old ones. These are harder to process, but they give good result. These are some sample tasting of different varieties. This is an example. This is an example of a dried plums, as it was done traditionally. They were dried whole. It was a specific kind of plum that you could dry through, and they were used as a replacement or as a substitute for a sugar that you had to buy, and nobody really had the cash. So these plums, they were treated. They were soaked in the water and processed on the grinder and cooked maybe a little, and this jam was used to sugar things. From that, these traditional cakes are coming also, that you see these rounded cakes with the fruit topping. It's again a landscape. There are different presentations of the project. This is in Banská Bystrica in Centrum, called Zahrada, garden. This is the actual, I think this is the recent one. This is what we did not so long time ago for a lady who kind of inherited the major garden and has too much fruit. So we were kind of changing in who will take care of fire, and then we split the result. So I believe in these networks of cooperation. I think it's interesting, and that's my answer. This is already the last slide. That's kind of my answer, my individual answer towards this economic question, because of course I am the privileged one who could decide if he buys a new car or if he invests into the land. But we all are, in this part of the world. So it gives a different perspective towards the thing. We do it sometimes as a self-fulfilling hobby, or something that we want to contribute into the landscape or to the network of people. But I think if we would be 100 years ago and I would start this orchard, then I could at least be happy that my grandchildren has something to inherit and to continue. But now I really cannot rely on this, so I have to try to explore all the possible benefits of this potential now. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you for this very insightful presentation, and the photographs also. Would somebody, Barbara?
Ideally speaking, do you want to make a living? If you could. As an artist, that's clear. I guess you follow your artistic career. Mm-hmm. But if this is going well, mm-hmm. or it's getting better and better, mm-hmm. what would be, is it still, or do you think in the future it is, or it will be what it is now? Or, talking about economy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's possible. And the farmer's life, I had a lot of experiences with farming and forestry in my childhood, and it's a hard life. It's a hard life choice. You're mostly very bound to the concrete place, and you are not really free and mobile as we love to be. And life is not bringing so much surprises to you, and traveling. So it's a hard choice. I don't know. I'm, for example, trying to, as I said, I'm questioning this privateness. Of course, I will be probably always somebody who has a final word, but I'm like inviting people into the process. So, for example, beekeepers, I'm trying to invite, so they have individual access, so they can go there anytime. And actually, I don't need them because walnuts and figs doesn't need the bees, but the area needs the bees. So. They can be there, they can be placed there. I know that there are some city people who wants to keep bees and they don't have the area where to have them. I don't know what the future brings. I have to be ready also with this plan to close it for a few months and go somewhere if it's necessary. So that's how I'm planning it. There are no tomatoes or flowers. So it's everything what is there can survive. And I really don't know what, if there will be any economic revenue in this sense. I doubt it. Sincerely, I doubt it. Also because I'm kind of like, it's not in my character to like ask for little amounts of money, so I don't really have it. But I think if I delegate it to my kids and they will see an opportunity to to supply a local restaurant that we have actually that is pretty fancy and it's working with seasonal fruit, etc. They can make a deal. I'm open to it. And I see some potential in this, in those young, sometimes we call them hipsters, but these people who are, like retro-oriented and they are back to the basics and they cook and they make marmalades and they sell them. So I'm pretty open to these collectives to collaborate. But sincerely, I don't see it as a direct revenue in my life. Only in the case that I will, I don't know under what circumstances will have to sell it. So then maybe it comes back. But that's really like ultimate way of gaining profit. That's not what I want. So it's a toy, I know, but I think it's a useful toy. It learns the others, and so.
Maybe I would also be interested, kind of, in following up the question that Barbara asked, but more perhaps specifically focusing the mobile fruit dryer, because I found it very interesting that it's mobile. And because a lot of services actually in rural areas, at least the ones that I know in Hungary, are nomadic. And I'm kind of interested in the fact that this is like a tool. It's, and I mean, it's also always an issue, like, okay, who owns the tool? So in this sense, I mean, you developed this mobile fruit dryer, but at the same time, it's, I don't know if you think about it as a tool to be shared with others, because perhaps you're not so focused on making a side income from it, but of course there are quite a lot of other people who are actually, I mean, living in rural areas, and there's always this issue how to make money. What tools do I have to make money? So I was just wondering, because to me this seems like a very attractive tool. And at the same time, at least in the areas that I know, there is always a huge problem, for example, especially in fruit orchards, that very often you cannot sell your fruit immediately. Like I had this experience with my grandparents, that they were storing apples over the winter into the spring until they were able to sell it all, or maybe they weren't. So I'm just thinking of how this mobile fruit dryer is maybe, becoming... responding to different economic processes in your context.
Mm-hmm. So me personally, I'm using it as much as I can, which means few times a season, because I don't have much time. It's pretty time consuming. I'm borrowing it and I'm sharing the know-how. So if anyone wants to do it, he's free to do so. It's not it's not patented, and it's on internet, so everyone could follow. But really, the dried fruit are not as precious, or it's not on market such a it's not such a thing of market value much. Like if you would go after the market value, then you make schnapps. Of course, that's the ultimate way of processing fruits, and that it has even the shelf life is the longest. And actually, I have a small observation that you from letting the others to pick the fruit and carry it away, which is like the easiest, so to say, way, to harvesting and bringing it somewhere, selling it, or processing it, adding some value, adding some time into it, then up to schnapps making, which is the longest to make, and also you pay taxes, so you have to invest into the process, so the profit is approximately the same into each product. When you calculate all the income, all the input and the time, then the profit is basically the same. The difference is between the life expectancy of the product, that you need to get rid of the fresh fruit fast, and the spirits or marmalades, they can wait. But you have difficulties with the distribution. It's not.
Thank you very much for the insight in your work. I only knew from narrations, and it's raised a very curious question in me. It's about how the neighbors react to your way of cultivating the area or your land there, because you bring along an impact of urbanization, saying you want to be flexible, you do not want to be dependent on the rhythm of the nature, on watering the plants, so you focus on walnuts and figs because they are somehow more independent. And I think, as I know rural areas, the neighbors would very scrutinily observe what you are doing, and I would be really curious about what did you already change, or what virus did you bring along?
Well, thank you, Brigitte. But first of all, I want to accommodate to the area. I don't want to be such a black sheep, but and I respect those people who work there. There is less and less of this extra house orchard. There's less and less. It's usually run by elderly people, so I don't know what will be the future of these orchards, because most probably one day they will turn into building plots. I'm talking about 10, 20 years. It's unstoppable. I really hope that it will be at least 20 years. Well, unless you cut the grass, you're okay. So really, that's the only condition, also legal condition. There is this ambrosia, this invasive plant that you have to cut. That's the pioneer plant. So when you turn the soil, it always comes ambrosia. That's 1 meter high. It's the pollen is allergenic. So then your legal duties are done. Then you are not supposed. You are also you have to take care about around the fence. You cannot let it to grow too high, and also the trees shouldn't exceed the fence, the branches of the trees. So you are required to plant minimum 3 meters from the fence, and that's it. You don't have more legal or generally expectations there. So they were really worried that I'm starting a development there when they have seen that I'm building, and I had to introduce the mayor and everyone that, come on, this is an open structure. It's like a bus stop, and it doesn't have even walls on each side, and it doesn't have the base, and so it's pretty okay. Then you have to ask for permission to drill a well. Announce that you are drilling a well. It has to be certain depth. You cannot go much deeper. You to not damage the real underground waters. So you have to go, I think, up. You can go up to 10, 15 meters. And the neighbors are okay. I have two brothers there. They are 76 and 74, and they are great. They are going there on bicycles to the nearby orchard every day, and it's perfect. We don't have any problems. And the rest of the village is, they are observing, of course, like what's going on. But I think they know that I'm harmless and that no, I don't. Well, there are people, Slovak people, because we are talking about the Rajka that is on the 20 kilometers from Bratislava. So it's under the very strong economic pressure from capital city of Slovakia. People who want to live in family houses are moving all around. They are moving also to Austria. Wolfsburg, Kice, all those villages are sold out by Slovaks. So that's also the case of the Rajka. And these people, of course, consider this either as an investment, either as a realization of their own dream. So they are interested. They would like to buy it or buy land nearby or something like this, which I cannot help them because I looked for this land for more than 5 years. So that's about the aspect.
So I have one more question here.
I found it very interesting that your approach to this kind of work, because your approach is very strongly an artistic one, and that's why it has many differences to another kind of farming in this way. Also, you colored the sticks, the poles. You colored the poles where you bound the trees. And I found this very interesting, and there were many aspects which make a difference to other kind of farmings, and I wanted to ask you to tell more about. Is it this kind of artistic approach you have? And it's really great that you managed. I once tried to start a kind of farming, but I completely failed. As I saw the plants growing there, I was so in love with the wonderful plants. I couldn't cut them, and I also never mow, mainly only once a year. Yeah. So because I love insects and I love that the bird eat the insects, so I completely failed in
I understand that.
And I'm normally the bad guy who cutting holes in the fences, as I grew up in the country. So. But your approach, I found very interesting that it's a different one.
Well, I try to combine, like, as you see on the figs and the walnuts, it's like symbolic, so I try to combine these like passions and senses with the rationality. So I have the background in the kind of farming and forestry. I studied forestry engineering before, and I had some praxis in that. So I know that the gardener has to cut, more you cut, more it grows. You all the time, like, things that are looking like unsensitive for other people, they turn out to be a right decision later sometimes. But I also like to combine it, so there are some untapped areas, especially for keeping like a permanent flowering. Especially weeds are beautiful, so all kind of like weeds are interesting because they flower. And I had two ways as an artist to approach this orchard, or I put it to myself like this, to make some kind of sculpture out of it, like in order to maybe form the trees differently or to let them run through some sculptures, etc. And I was flirting with that, but then I gave it up because I saw that it's not sensitive for the tree, kind of, or I don't know. And I thought, then I rather focused on the social aspect of the thing. So I will keep the orchard as the orchard should be, or as an extensive orchard should be. I will do everything for the tree. The tree needs to grow and to fruit. And I will rather play with the rest. So that was my decision, because I was considering to be even more like artistic in the way of making the orchard. But then I realized that I should probably keep the plants as is best for them, or I don't know. So it's always a decision making. It's a beautiful process, of course, and my wife supposed to be here because she's in Vienna, but we fight a lot about for example, about the cutting the trees or or moving the lawn, also in our big garden. So I see that it has to be done, and she likes to keep everything as it is. So I understand this approach. Yes. Excuse me?
The poles which you colored?
I explained that it comes from the exhibition that was in Prague. That was a part of the symbolic of the exhibition there. And but I had the plan that I will bring them to garden, of course. So yes, I think everybody is getting extremely tired.
No,
So
I think it's
want to
very
take more
interesting.
time.
Nobody is tired, and
am.
you are okay. Good. Let's stop it here, Martin. I would like to thank you, and maybe we can even come back to some common questions between you and also Katalin later. Now I suggest a break. We have to have a break, 10 minutes, and then we continue with Katalin and Gabriele, Katalin Arditi and Gabriele Sturm, and I promise you we will be finished at 6 o'clock. But until 6 o'clock, we continue with our presentations. So Martin, thank you very much, and see you in 10 minutes.